What is going on, YouTube universe? This is ArghGodzirra. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me for yet another AFL tips, predictions and discussion video, where today, as we normally do, we look ahead to next round, which is round
21.
We look back and reflect, take time to reflect on the round previous, which was round 20, and that's where we kick off today's video with the first game of last weekend, Fremantle taking on Melbourne at Optus Stadium. I backed Fremantle by 11, but as you can clearly see, ladies and gentlemen, 46 points the way of Melbourne. Now, I turn around and said that Melbourne was every chance to win this game. I backed Fremantle on the back of thinking Fremantle got the better of Melbourne once before. They're playing on their home deck. Does Fremantle have what it takes to get the job done? I thought the draw to Richmond the week prior would have given them a little momentum boost. Turns out I was so rudely fucking mistaken, and they never got out of the starting block, and Melbourne just came out and further cemented their premiership defence. And I feel like a real idiot for tipping Fremantle, because I feel Melbourne was the easier choice here. They were the favourites to win despite Fremantle playing at home. I took a risk. I said at the end of the previous video that I need to start taking risks if I want to move up the ladder. Unfortunately, this one did not pay off. MCG, Collingwood, Port Adelaide. This was a game and a half to watch. I thought once again Collingwood were going to drop the ball, but yet again, and I don't know how many times they've done it this year, they have found themselves in the opposite of Richmond's realm. So Richmond have struggled to close games that are less than a kick. Collingwood have seemingly been able to hold on to win games less than a kick. And yet again, last week, 6 points the difference going the way of Collingwood in what was one of the games of the round by far. Port Adelaide came out with a force. I think they were like 5 or 6 goals up at one point in time. Collingwood looked like they were in all sorts. I thought the game was going to be over by half time, and then Collingwood, just like that, they just flipped the switch, came out and looked absolutely dominant. Josh Dacos had a very slow start. As soon as he started getting a lot of the ball on the outside, Collingwood seemed to lift. So I feel Josh Dacos's position in the Collingwood team is very understated, because he seems to be one of those players that if he gets a little bit of momentum about him, he can be one that helps flip that switch. And once he started accumulating possession and started getting the ball to other players, I feel he brought a lot of players into the game. Very underrated season. I think Josh Dacos might be up for an All-Australian nomination when the time comes. And just to confirm, I will be doing a All-Australian selection video and a Best 22 under 22 selection video as suggested by some of you guys, so stay tuned for that later in the year. But that was my first tick for the round, and I was very happy with that. SCG, Sydney Giants. I turned around and said Sydney should win this by 6 or 7 goals quite comfortably. They slaughtered GWS, and I don't know what's going on with the Giants. I really don't. I think Mark McVeigh's position as a future coach is very wobbly. I think he'll see the year out as caretaker, but I don't think he's going to continue on. I don't think he has shown enough to keep the job, which is very upsetting, because what Mark McVeigh has brought to the club, he hasn't been winning games, but he has been willing to roll the dice and do positional changes and bring in debutants and give people a chance, and that is what I love seeing coaches do. Very similar to what Damien Hardwick has done with Richmond. Our season has been on the line for God knows how long this year, but he has still not shied away from giving youngsters game time, bringing in Tyler Sonsie, bringing in Noah Cumberland, and these kids are showing they have a lot of talent. So it's always good to see coaches wanting to bring in the young crop, but unfortunately, when you're doing it and you're getting smacked as bad as the Giants are, they're in all sorts. And as I mentioned in the previous video, you know, the reports from the salary cap waiver, some are saying that it's only $1 million. I've heard that the salary cap woes are almost up to $4 million. At any point, you've got Tom Green, who is being omitted from the team. Richmond might want to pounce on him. Richmond are heavily linked to Tim Taranto. Will they get him? Tanner Brun has been linked to Geelong. Will Geelong end up picking him up? Will Jacob Hopper end up leaving? Will Lockie Whitfield, even though he's contracted, he's very upset at the club apparently. Will he leave? They're probably going to be the one club that I think are going to have a lot of players come to the end of the year putting their hands up saying, I want to leave. And that is huge, considering only 3 years ago, this club was playing in a grand final. And I seriously can't get my head around that fact. Marvel Stadium, St Kilda, Hawthorn, very close game. I said it would be a close contest. Best on ground by far was Rowan Marshall. I don't know how a ruckman can get not only 30 hitouts for the game, but 30 disposals for the game. He was monumental in St Kilda getting over the line here. St Kilda keeping their finals chances alive. They are in the top 8 by 2 points due to the Richmond Fremantle draw. Richmond should be sitting in 8th spot, but unfortunately it's not to be, and we are sitting in 9th, and that has been the butt of every fucking joke this week. GMHBA Stadium, Geelong Bulldogs. Bulldogs came out firing, and I said last week, this is a game the Bulldogs have to lose and Richmond have to win their respective game in order to keep their finals chances alive. And Bulldogs were 20, 30 odd points up in the first quarter, and I thought to myself, this is it. This is Richmond's season done. And then Geelong did myself the biggest favour and just came out and they just started clicking. I don't know whether it was just a lapse in a collective thought or whether they were just a little bit, slower to the contest, but that when they started getting the ball rolling, they proved why they are, in my opinion, the current benchmark of the AFL. It's Melbourne's premiership that they're defending, but I feel at the moment it is Geelong's premiership to lose. Big call, maybe, but I think Geelong would have to be going in as favourite for the premiership at this point in time. This is where I get my next blemish for the round, and my only other blemish. At Adelaide Oval, we had Adelaide take on Carlton. I said in last week's video, I gave Adelaide every chance to win this game, and I felt that this was probably one of their only winnable games for the rest of the year. And they did it. They came out and won, and there is a lot of talk about Carlton this week, because Carlton, for example, I think the biggest, as I rub my nose, I apologise, the biggest thing with Carlton was the missed tackles and the lack of pressure. And I think the biggest display of that from the Adelaide-Carlton game is Darcy Fogarty and his nomination for Goal of the Year this week. He manages to break not one, not two, but 3 consecutive tackles from 3 Carlton players to then turn around and snap the ball through the goals. Carlton have prided themselves this year on their pressure around the contest, their tackling ability, their ferocity. Adelaide made them look second-rate, and that was huge. Carlton, unfortunately, dropping this game, now find themselves in a position where they could potentially, after starting the year, I think it was 8-2 for the first 10 games, not playing finals this year, which would be huge, but not as huge as the talk coming out of the Adelaide camp this week. About camp. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar, at the end of 2017, Adelaide were on top of the ladder, minor premiers, best team in the league for that season. They came up against Richmond in the grand final, and we all know Richmond broke their drought by coming back and having one of the all-time big grand final wins, in my opinion. And we all know, following that, well, most of us would know, for those who don't, there was a training camp that Adelaide underwent that a lot of talk and speculation started coming about, and the AFL had to investigate it because people were saying there was some very untoward things going down in that camp. The AFL PA turned around and said there was nothing wrong. The courts looked into it, and the courts apparently turned around and said there was nothing wrong, and they moved on. They left it. Eddie Betts has recently released his autobiography, which he details some of the shit that went down in that camp. And I feel there's been a lot of sweeping under the rug going down. He mentions things like there was that they had somebody dressed up in the car park named Richmond, all in Richmond gear, to berate the fuck out of the Adelaide players every day after that loss. That doesn't seem like much, fair enough. They had hired military men come and surround players and intimidate players, have them bound by rope, fighting for a knife to untie themselves, while they had these military men and other players abusing the fuck out of the players that were bound. Eddie Betts even went as far as saying that they did some form of, togetherness, where they brought in Indigenous artifacts and did things that the Indigenous community would do involving non-Indigenous players, which obviously doesn't sit well with Eddie Betts as an Indigenous player, and I can fully understand that. And what shocked me the most is, obviously every club has like a therapist or someone they can see, and these players see those therapists in confidence. Eddie Betts was saying that he had people on his back while he was bound with rope, yelling at him and screaming at him, saying that he was going to be a shit father because he was brought up by a single Indigenous mother. Shit like that. And I mean, being surrounded by armed military men, and like they were put in buses that had fucking newspaper on the windows, and what the fuck has that got to do with AFL at all? I don't fucking understand. And the AFL have come out and said, "Oh, we're sorry." And Adelaide have come out and said, "We're sorry." It's gonna take more than a fucking sorry to fix this. And they're now going to be reopening the case. And now that Eddie Betts has come forward, the AFLPA has apparently said that all this information Eddie Betts has given is new information. They feel that Adelaide players might have been coerced into keeping silent about this stuff, and now hearing just on the surface about some of the stuff that went down. I'm very interested to find out how deep this fucking rabbit hole goes, because they're now going to be interviewing every single AFL listed player at that club within the 2018 season to find out their experiences and what happened. And if any one of them can corroborate what Eddie Betts has said in his book, Adelaide are in for a world of fucking hurt as a football club. This is huge news. And, I've had arguments online with people. I don't see why Eddie Betts, such a prominent face, not just in the AFL community, but the Indigenous community, fighting to stamp out racism and all that stuff, I don't think he would put his reputation on the line by bullshitting in a book. This, to me, is a way for him to get out what happened, and I don't know whether he's going to suffer anything. I don't know whether they were paid off to keep their mouths shut. I don't know whether the case may be, but if you're interested in following this, just keep your eyes open and your ears open, because this story's far from finished. Gold Coast Eagles, Metricon Stadium. This game came down to the wire, and I tipped the Gold Coast, but I found myself really rooting for West Coast to get up at the end here, and you're watching a good game when that is the case. When you go against your tip and you really want to see, the comeback of another team. Gold Coast played phenomenally, as did West Coast, and the final 5 minutes of that game, the back and forth, holy shit, it was just goal for goal. They kept in touch the entire game. If you had told me going into the game, the Gold Coast West Coast game would finish with a 3-point difference and both clubs would score over 100 points, I'd have told you were fucking dreaming. This was close to, I reckon it's up there with Collingwood and Port Adelaide as game of the round. 100%. Happy I got the Gold Coast tip right though. MCG, Richmond, Brisbane. One of the all-time Richmond wins, and I'm not just talking about this season, I'm talking about collectively over the last couple of years. I tipped Richmond on the back of knowing Brisbane struggle in Melbourne, and Richmond have had Brisbane's number whenever we have played Brisbane down here. And the game started, Eric Hipwood kicks a goal. Joe Danaher kicks a goal. Charlie Cameron kicks a goal. Richmond kicker behind. Eric Hipwood kicks another goal. Richmond kicker behind. Joe Danaher kicks another goal. Richmond kick another behind, and all of a sudden, we're 7 or 8 goals down heading into the first quarter. Halfway through the second quarter, we are 46 points behind Brisbane. Now, any other supporter would have probably given up hope. I know my brother walked in and laughed at me saying game over, and I turned around and said, no, we've still got a chance, and he laughed at me. My brother-in-law asked me at half-time, do you think Richmond are a chance? And I turned around and said to him, if we kick the first couple of goals in the third quarter, I give Richmond every chance to come back here. I'm one of those supporters where you can be 10 goals down with looking like there's no hope in hell, and I would still be like, I'd be like Jim Carrey from Dumb and Dumber, you're saying there's a chance, That's me, I'm that type of supporter. And Richmond came out in the second half, very similar to how we've seen in instances like the 2020 Grand Final against Geelong. Just came out a completely different club and put them to the sword. We were at the final dying moments of the game, again, just like the Gold Coast West Coast game, it was a draw. Then Richmond would kick a point. Then Brisbane would kick a point to tie it back up again. Brisbane had 2 late chances that they squandered. The first was when Marlon Pickett clotheslined Brisbane's, it was Mitch Robinson, and he had a shot that routinely he would kick 9 times out of 10. He sprayed it. And then Charlie Cameron marked the ball late. He should have kicked it from there quite comfortably. He missed it. Richmond managed to get a point in front. In the dying moments of the game, there's about a minute on the clock. The ball comes down into Richmond's forward line. It is marked by Gardiner. Gardiner goes to play on. Noah Cumberland manages to get a hand on the ball and smother it. It spills to Trent Cotchin. Little chip over the top to Tom Lynch. He marks the ball dead in front of goal, takes his 30 seconds, puts the ball through the middle. 7-point win for the Tigers. On the back of Tom Lynch kicking 5, Noah Cumberland, the kid that everybody was poking fun of at the end of the Richmond Fremantle game for playing on and potentially costing Richmond the win, answers by coming out the following week and kicking 5 goals of his own, including one that was nominated for Goal of the Year. Huge game from Cumberland. I'm becoming a really big fan of his work. And now we set ourselves up well to finish the rest of the season off strong. Downside, Dylan Grimes does a hamstring. He might miss the next 3 weeks, which is very disappointing because obviously he's our co-captain. He's a general in defence. But Richmond got the job done against a very valiant Brisbane, but a lot of people are obviously getting stuck into Brisbane because they choked that 40-plus point lead. It's about time Richmond are on the end of a fucking fade out instead of fading out themselves. And then there's really not much to talk about here. Essendon smashed North Melbourne just like we anticipated Essendon would smash North Melbourne. So I tipped 7 out of 9 for the round. It wasn't the most, however. I think we had one 8. No, we had one 9 out of 9. I tip cool. Rocco G. Perfect round of tipping. Congratulations to you, sir, for getting the job done. When we have a look at the total tips of the round, we have had, hi to you too, Craig K, break away from the pack by 1 tip to hold top of the ladder. Hot on his heels, we have Some Cripple Michael T and Brighton 75 Kirk G on 123, Frio 90 Courtney K on 122, and still well in the hunt, we've got Welsh Duke, CWA, Rockstar Pool 69, all on 120. I think after that it gets a little bit hard. I was hoping to move up the ranks this week. I'm still 16th. I want to finish in the top 10. I'm still 3 tips behind. So, congratulations to hi to you too, Craig K, for again finishing the round as our number 1 tipster for the competition. I've really enjoyed this year. This year we've had a little under. We had 60 odd last year, so we're down on numbers, but I still appreciate every single one of you getting on board. Hopefully next year we can make it bigger and better. But, speaking of moving forward, time to get our tips in for this week. First game of the round, Friday night, MCG, Melbourne, Collingwood. Do we go with Collingwood continuing their undefeated streak, or do we go with Melbourne? I'm going to go with Melbourne because I feel here something's got to give and Collingwood won't get away with another close win. I think Melbourne too good a team to allow that to happen. They've just gone to Fremantle and decimated Fremantle on their home turf. I think they bring a lot of momentum coming in from that game. I'm going to go 21 points the way of Melbourne. Wanting to touch on Collingwood before we continue on to the next game. The previous game, Jack Ginnivan, again, was in situations where people are thinking he's been hardly done by. I personally feel whenever he was near the contest and could initiate contact, he tried doing it, whether it be through a head high, rolling the arm, or whether it was instantly dropping the knees. Every time he did that, the umpire paid holding the ball against, like I said they were going to be instructed to do, and he would give away a free kick. Ginnivan showed when he breaks away from those packs and he actually works, he can work hard. I think he kicked 3 goals in the opening half. And people are saying he's been hardly done by. He said in the post-game interview that it's, affecting his mental health. I feel it is a little bit of a witch hunt when it comes to Ginnivan, because we've had players like Selwood and Luke Shuey and those kind of players doing it for years. And now all of a sudden they want to make an example of a kid. However, I don't think that example has come just out of the blue and they've just, plucked a kid out of nowhere saying we're going to make an example. He still brought this on himself. When you bring attention to deliberately doing this all the time, the conversation's going to be had. But I'm starting to think as well, if the conversation is being had now and AFL are now listening to it, why were they not listening to it when the conversation has clearly been had, especially amongst the supporters, for Selwood doing it for years, or Shuey doing it for years? I still don't fucking know. But it looks like the rules are now effectively going to start changing, and the game's going to start evolving. So I don't know where that leaves Ginnivan and whether now he's still going to continue doing what he's doing, knowing that he's going to get pinned for it. Whether other players now are going to start kind of trying to break away from that mould, I don't know. I reckon it's great for the game, because there's too many players that try to play for free kicks, and games have been decided by that. We've had Luke Shuey deliberately roll the arm against Port Adelaide and defeat them in a final, and things like it's just good to see that there's actual rule changes that are coming in that are going to effectively and positively change the game. Saturday, Tassie, Hawthorn, Gold Coast. Very interesting here because Hawthorn in Tasmania, we know they play well. Gold Coast on the back of a huge win at home. I'm going to go the Gold Coast here. I'm going to go the Gold Coast and hope they can get up. I might change my mind if I see some team selections go a little bit differently, but I think the Gold Coast can win this, and I feel that there would be a few that would actually tip Hawthorn. 71% have gone with Hawthorn. So I feel maybe going Gold Coast here could help me move up the ladder a little bit. You've got to make some strategic calls every now and then. Giant Stadium. GWS Essendon. I'm going Essendon. GWS are in all sorts. I don't know whether they'll win a game for the rest of the year. That is huge. I didn't think Essendon would start building the momentum they've been building in the last month, but they've been looking pretty good in the last month. I've spoken about GWS earlier in this game. I have a couple of GWS subscribers that watch this, and they're in all sorts as well. I feel your pain. I really do. I don't think the pain eases this week, unfortunately. I think Essendon get it done quite comfortably. Marvel Stadium, Saturday afternoon, Bulldogs Fremantle. Bulldogs Fremantle. I'm going to go the Doggies. And I originally, in my squiggle ladder predictor, went Fremantle in this game. But on the back of what we've seen the last 2 weeks, they struggled against Richmond at Marvel, and then at home they struggled against Melbourne. I don't see them having an answer for the Bulldogs, but then again, something in the back of my mind tells me struggle for 2 weeks, they come out and they can cause a huge upset, and if they do, it's going to really annoy me. I know Treloar is out for another week for the Bulldogs, but I don't think his out would impact the team too much. They've still got a lot of class in that team to get the job done. GMHBA Stadium. Geelong, St Kilda. Geelong. Benchmark of the competition, getting the job done quite comfortably against a lot of teams. Could St Kilda upset? I do see a world where it happens. However, I don't think this is the world it's going to happen. I'm going Geelong by 38 points. It's going to be a pretty sizable win. This is where Geelong can start building percentage, and I don't think it's going to come down to percentage for Geelong, because I think Geelong are going to finish outright on top, but it's always good to get a percentage boost. And Saturday rounds out with Port Adelaide taking on Richmond. Now, in my squiggle predictor, and coming into this tipping video earlier in the week, I was actually going to be tipping Port Adelaide to win this game. I did so in the squiggle predictor. I am now tipping Richmond. Big news as to why. So, Port Adelaide's forward structure at the moment is Charlie Dixon, Mitch Georgiades, Todd Marshall. Charlie Dixon has had to play in the ruck, which takes him out of the forward line, and last week against Collingwood, I think the most impactful thing he did all day was give away a 50 in the dying moments of the game, which could have won them the game. Mitch Georgiades can do a spectacular mark every now and again. Apart from a pretty routine around the corner banana kick to kick a goal last week, he did nothing else outside of that goal. Todd Marshall has been the damaging forward for Port Adelaide all season, and he will be out of this game due to COVID protocol, which is huge, because I feel Dylan Grimes being out of our forward line would have opened up for Todd Marshall to have a really big game for Port. Now that their main spearhead is out, and they're now going to have to rely on, a Mitch Georgiades to play a predominant forward role, or they now might need Charlie Dixon to not chop out in the ruck and just rely on Jeremy Finlayson in the ruck and have Charlie as the main point up forward. This now structurally, I think, hurts Port Adelaide a little bit, and I think Richmond might pinch a win here. And a lot of people, I feel, are going to tip Port Adelaide as well. So this is an outside tip that I'm going for, to hopefully boost myself up the ladder as well. If Richmond win this, I had Richmond losing this and winning the next two to make the top 8. If they win this, on the back of the huge comeback they had against Brisbane last week, they are primed to play finals this year. Sunday kicks off at Marvel with North taking on Sydney. I think this is just routine for Sydney. They're going to lock up a top 4 spot with this win, and I think it's going to be quite sizable. I don't think there's not much else we can talk about for this game. The only thing we can talk about is apparently behind the scenes, Alistair Clarkson is slowly starting to build a team together to come back to coaching next year, and North Melbourne could be where he lands. So stay tuned for more news on that. Sunday at the Gabba, Brisbane, Carlton. I'm going Brisbane at the Gabba. Brisbane might struggle in Melbourne, but they rarely struggle at home. And we're talking about a Carlton team that has just travelled to Adelaide and was made to look absolutely stupid and was embarrassed by Adelaide. And now the following week, they have to travel again up to Brisbane. I think all that travelling plays key factor into, players' ability come game day. Brisbane are going to want to be very hungry coming into this game as well. And if Carlton were letting all those tackles and the pressure was down and everything else, letting the tackles slip and not wanting to go the second effort, Brisbane are going to maul them. And the final game of the round is West Coast taking on Adelaide in Optus Stadium. And I said I was never going to tip West Coast for the rest of the year. But on the back of what I saw them do last week against the Gold Coast, I feel they can get it done against Adelaide. I really do. West Coast will be without Jai Cully because Jai Cully went and hip and shouldered Noah Anderson in the head and he got 2 weeks suspension. But I don't think Jai Cully's out affects the team all that much. This will be Josh Kennedy's final game as well. Josh Kennedy has announced his retirement this week. I'm going to go with the Eagles to win in Josh Kennedy's retirement game. I think they get up for him. Speaking of retirements, going through as well, ex-Geelong and current Port Adelaide player Stephen Motlop has announced his retirement effective immediately. They join, obviously, Kane Lambert from Richmond announcing his retirement. Matt Parker from Richmond has announced his retirement as well. Was there any other retirements out of the league this week? I don't think so. I think it was just Stephen Motlop and it was Josh Kennedy. Oh no, the big one. Sorry, there was another big one. Fremantle. David Mundy from Fremantle has announced he will hang up his boots at the end of the year as well. So some big names and some very classy players announcing their retirement from the game. But to round out my tips for the round, I've gone with Melbourne, Gold Coast, Essendon, Bulldogs, Geelong, Richmond, Sydney, Brisbane, and West Coast. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, this will be the final video for AFL content where I refer to myself as ArghGodzirra. We are undergoing a rebranding here on the channel. It's not going to affect any of the content I do. I'm still going to do AFL content for you all. I've still got big plans for a lot of content, especially in the off-season and at the back end of the year. Tipping competitions are still going to go down. It's just you're going to see a name change, and you are going to see rebranding with a mascot and banner and all that kind of stuff. So if you see ArghGodzirra missing from your subscriber list, all you got to do is look for Zirra. Plain and simple. Just dropping it down. ArghGodzirra is shifting to Zirra the Gaming Kaiju. So you'll see the rebrand go down. I've already announced it in a video. There will be posts coming out to remind you all. But just letting you know, even though the rebrand's going down, AFL content is here to stay. Don't stress. And even more so, probably more AFL content are going to come on the back of the rebrand as well. Thank you for joining me for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you're new. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.